Welcome to Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast series about communication skills in the workplace. I'm your host, John Witzman. Join me as I speak with industry professionals and Conestoga faculty and alumni to explore their journeys with reading and writing skills. Follow us as we talk about how communications learning has changed over the years, how these skills are used in a wide range of industries, and the future of workplace communications. What does it look like around you in the workplace now when the people that you're working with perhaps are now getting their communications education, their reading and writing education in the modern world, mm-hmm. and not in the context that we had, where the pre-internet era? Do you find that those skill sets are different? Perhaps when you look around, do you see that the skill sets are changing? Do you wish maybe that more of your younger colleagues had that deep training in the 5-paragraph essay, or is that maybe a little bit romantic to think?
Probably a little romantic to think about the 5-paragraph essay. There's a time and a place for the 5-paragraph essay, but it's about structure. It's about knowing your audience and making choices to present an argument in a certain way. What I admire about a lot of my younger colleagues is their knowledge of different communication platforms. And I will happily call myself a dinosaur when it comes to a lot of that, and I know that I've got a lot to learn from my colleagues. In my current job, we need to communicate with customers. Right. So we inherit the customer after sales is done, after implementation is done, and now our customer success managers meet on a monthly basis with somebody from the customer to help them achieve their goals. So traditionally, that would be done through email and through meetings. But I just interviewed a young woman yesterday for an opening on our team. She has a lot of experience in producing TikTok videos. Now, we deal with accountants at school boards. Right. I don't know necessarily that TikTok videos would be a good future way of communicating, but it might.
But it might be?
It might. Yeah. And especially as the workforce starts to turn over, today's accountant at the school board might be close to retirement, perhaps, right. Yep. And we might have a kind of a younger generation coming in. I am really excited to learn from my younger colleagues how we can use alternative communication methods to connect with our clients. Email might not be the best way. We need people well-versed in alternative communication methods to be able to connect with the customers. But in that communication, there needs to be structure. Right. There needs to, the message can't be all over the place. There needs to be a message. Right. Your thesis statement. Sure. My boss says in every point of contact with your customer, you have to have a point of view. Every question you ask them has to have an actual point behind it. Sure. And that's all drawn from knowing how to communicate effectively. Right. Those questions that I heard you articulate a few minutes ago when you were talking about your approach to, some business writing project or some kind of internal strategy session where you were sort of thinking out loud, who is my audience and what do they need and what are my... Was that part of your training too, that sort of approaching the communication task with a kind of planning stage? Was that something that got taught into your writing and thinking process, or was that something that you developed just sort of through training and practice? A combination of the two. I think your academic instruction is always going to be theoretical to some extent. Yeah. So I know that when I was in the UW's the Rhetoric and Professional Writing program a number of years ago now, we certainly had classes where we learned to create kind of these audience profiles and then determine how we were going to write differently for each. But it's just theory. Yeah. Well-grounded theory, good knowledge to have. Yeah. But then when you're in the workplace, you start to see it in a much more applied context. When I was writing, user manuals and the online version of those, our particular product at the time was aimed at a system administrator, so somebody with a high level of technical knowledge. So I would write it from that perspective. Whereas if my mother was reading that, she would have no clue of what I was saying, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So you start, and then I worked for a different software company which had a completely different audience, and the nature of the writing completely changed because that audience was different. So it starts to coalesce.
Right.
The theory then migrates into kind of real life, and you just start to intuit after a while how to write something in order to reach the appropriate type of audience.
And that marks the end of another episode of Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by me, John Witzman, on behalf of the Communications Department and School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Conestoga College. You can find other episodes of this series on our YouTube channel, Reading and Writing Between the Lines. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks for listening.